Hello, and welcome to the Cheater's Diary, where we dive into raw, real-life stories packed with emotion and unforgettable twists. If you're loving this video, hit that like button and subscribe to join us in spreading these meaningful tales. Now, let's kick off today's journey. Ethan stepped out of his beat-up Ford Focus, the golden-orange sunset glinting off its faded silver paint. He stretched, his back cracking after the long drive from the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio. The duplex loomed ahead, two mirror-image units with plain red brick walls and small front porches framed by white wooden railings. A narrow strip of grass ran between them like a natural divider. The left side was his. The right, he figured, belonged to his landlord. He double-checked the address on his phone, though he'd memorized it already. This was the place. The right side door creaked open. Sarah stepped out as if she'd been waiting. "Ethan." Her voice was low, confident, with a slight rasp, like someone who'd smoked for years. "Yeah, hey," Ethan replied, stepping forward, hands shoved in his jeans pockets to hide a flicker of nerves. He sized her up quickly. Sarah wasn't what he'd pictured for a landlord. No fuss, no stiffness. She wore faded jeans, a loose white tee, and stood barefoot on the porch's wooden planks. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy bun, a few strands framing her face. A cigarette dangled between her index and middle fingers, white smoke curling into the evening air. She leaned against a porch post, relaxed, like the world couldn't rush her. "Ethan, thanks for being on time," she said, exhaling smoke, her eyes fixed on him. "I'm Sarah." She smiled, friendly, but hard to read. "No problem," Ethan said, trying to sound casual. "Nice to meet you." He caught himself staring a bit too long, quickly glancing at the grass below. Sarah stubbed out her cigarette on the concrete edge, slow and deliberate, then gestured toward his door. "Come check out your place." Ethan followed her into the apartment. It was small, but clean. The living room flowed into the kitchen with a short hallway leading to a bedroom and bathroom. Freshly painted beige walls, new gray carpeting, and a big window let in light, making it feel bigger than it was. "Nothing fancy," Sarah said, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. "But it's quiet. No noisy neighbors. Well, just me." She shrugged, her lips quirking up. Ethan grinned. "Honestly, this is great." He walked around, brushing his hand over the cool granite kitchen counter. Sarah watched him, her gaze curious but not judgmental. "You're younger than I expected," she said, her tone light but teasing. Ethan chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. 24. Hope that's not a problem." Sarah's lips twitched, her eyes glinting. "Not at all. Young folks usually pay rent on time. Less complaining. Less drama." She lingered on the last word, like she was testing him. Ethan shrugged, unsure if she was joking or serious. Probably both. She was hard to pin down, like an open book written in a language he hadn't mastered. They went over the lease details. Rent due on the 1st, utilities included, trash pickup on Mondays. Sarah handed him the keys, her fingers brushing his palm. Cool. Fleeting. "Don't break anything," she said, locking eyes with him. "I'm not exactly rolling in cash for repairs." "I'll try," Ethan replied, slipping the keys into his pocket. Sarah stepped onto her porch, pausing at her door. "Oh, by the way," she said, turning back, "I'm usually around. Need anything, just holler." She lit another cigarette, the lighter's flame flaring in the dusk. "Thanks," Ethan said. "I appreciate it." He stood there, watching her take a long drag, smoke swirling like thin fog. She leaned against the post, eyes half closed, savoring the moment. Ethan felt a small spark, undefined, like they both sensed something but weren't saying it. "I'll let you unpack," Sarah said, catching his gaze. Her smile hinted she knew he was watching. Ethan looked away, feeling a bit foolish. "Yeah, thanks again." He headed inside, grabbing boxes from his car, but Sarah's image, standing there, smoke curling, confident eyes, stuck with him. There was something about her, a pull he couldn't name, like she didn't even try to draw attention, but did anyway. That night, as the sun sank and the sky turned cotton candy pink, Ethan stood by his living room window, his gaze drifting to Sarah's porch. She sat there, barefoot, legs propped on the railing, a glass of red wine in hand. A cigarette glowed between her fingers. The porch light caught her hair, creating a soft halo. She tilted her head back, eyes closed, lost in thought. Ethan flicked off his light, standing still, watching her a moment longer. She seemed content, complete, like she didn't need anyone. But maybe, just maybe, she didn't mind not to overthink it. But the feeling, like an undercurrent, had already started to flow, quiet but strong enough to notice. The first days in the duplex passed smoothly. Ethan settled into his new routine. His job at the auto parts store was straightforward, not thrilling, but it covered rent. The apartment was quiet, just as Sarah promised. Morning birds and distant traffic were the only sounds breaking the stillness. He started noticing Sarah, not constantly, but enough to make her part of his daily rhythm. One early morning, Ethan stepped outside, a steaming coffee mug in hand, the air crisp. He was in a rush, due at the store early for inventory. Sarah was already there, on her porch, wrapped in a thin gray robe over a tank top and shorts. Her hair was wet, loose, like she'd just showered. A cigarette glowed in her hand, her coffee mug perched on the railing. "Up early?" she asked, her voice husky, glancing at him over the mug's rim. "Yeah," Ethan said, adjusting his work shirt, the store's logo slightly crooked. "Inventory day. My boss loves counting brake pads at dawn." Sarah let out a soft laugh, smoke curling from her nose. "Sounds thrilling." Her tone teased, but her eyes were warm, like she genuinely enjoyed hearing him talk. "Oh, living the dream," Ethan shot back, smirking, trying to play it cool. He felt her gaze, sharp but kind, like she was figuring him out. "At least you're not afraid of work," she said, tilting her head, hair brushing her cheek. "Rare for your age." There it was again, the age thing. Ethan noticed she brought it up often, not meanly, but like she was probing. "I'm old at heart," he joked, shrugging. Sarah smiled, her eyes narrowing, like she found his answer amusing. "I'll believe it when I see it," she said, her voice low, letting the words hang. Ethan didn't know how to respond, so he just grinned and headed to his car. "Have a good day," he called. "You too, Ethan," she replied, his name rolling off her tongue, slow, like a lingering note. That evening, after a long shift, Ethan came home exhausted. A brown paper bag sat by his door, eggs, bread, a couple of apples. He glanced over, spotting Sarah leaning against her doorframe, a baggy sweater slipping off one shoulder, barefoot on the wood. "Forgot to mention," she called, her tone casual, "there's a sale at the market nearby. Thought you could use some stuff." Ethan blinked, holding the bag. "Wow, you didn't have to do that." She shrugged, her lips curving. "I know, but when I was starting out, I struggled too. Plus," she paused, eyes twinkling, "you don't strike me as the grocery shopping type." Ethan laughed, unable to argue. Fair point. He stood there, bag heavy in his hand, a strange warmth spreading. It wasn't just the food. It was how she said it, offhand but meaningful, like she noticed him beyond just a tenant. "Thanks, Sarah," he said, sincere. She nodded, smiling, then slipped inside, leaving him with that odd electric feeling. A few days later, Ethan took out the trash, the sunset painting the street orange. Sarah appeared in black leggings and an oversized sweater, one shoulder bare, cigarette in hand. "Hey," he said first. "Hey," she replied, pausing, her small smile warm. "Settled in yet?" "Yeah, this place is great," he said, leaning against the trash bin, trying to sound relaxed. Sarah tilted her head, studying him. "You're not like my past tenants," she said. "How so?" he asked, curious. "They either tried too hard or avoided me entirely," she said, waving a hand, hinting at the age gap. "You know, the age thing." Ethan grinned. "I don't see a reason to try too hard or avoid you." Sarah laughed, tapping ash onto the concrete. "Good answer." Silence settled, comfortable, warm, like they both felt something but weren't ready to name it. "Night, Ethan," she said, her voice soft, heading to her door. "Night, Sarah," he replied, watching her go, a slight tension in his chest. Inside, Ethan started wondering, was he reading too much into it? The attraction, the glances, the casual but loaded words. He shook his head, stepping inside, but Sarah's image, messy hair, cigarette smoke, cryptic smile, lingered like a song he couldn't shake. One Saturday morning, sunlight slipped through Ethan's blinds, casting soft stripes on the hardwood. No alarm, no work rush. For the first time in 2 weeks, he could breathe. He was sipping coffee in a rumpled tea, hair a mess, when a soft knock came. He opened the door to find Sarah. She wore a loose gray tee, ripped jeans, no makeup, hair in a messy bun with stray strands. A small, slightly dented cardboard box rested in her hands. "Morning," she said, her smile soft, eyes glinting like she knew groggy. "What's up?" Sarah held up the box, shrugging. "Need a favor. Bought a little shelf for my place, but the instructions are in like Swedish or something. You free?" Ethan chuckled, scratching his neck. "Swedish is rough. I'll give it a shot." Sarah's lips twitched, her eyes playful. "My hero. I'll owe you." "Coffee work," he teased. "Deal," she said, turning, beckoning him to follow. Stepping into Sarah's apartment, Ethan felt the difference immediately. It was warm, lived in, soft light from a table lamp, a few potted plants on the windowsill, a faint mix of her perfume and old cigarette smoke, a black and white photo, maybe a younger Sarah, standing by a lake, hung slightly crooked on the wall. The space told a story, but he couldn't read it all yet. Sarah knelt on the living room floor, opening the box, spilling out wooden planks and screws. "You any good at this?" she asked, glancing at him through a stray lock of hair. "I'm a guy," Ethan said, smirking. "Gotta keep my pride intact." Sarah laughed, the sound light, warm. "Don't mess it up, handyman." They sat on the floor, sorting pieces. The instructions were a mess. Cryptic symbols, tiny text. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same plank. Ethan felt a spark at his fingertips, but didn't pull back. Neither did Sarah. She glanced at him, her lips curving, like she noticed but didn't mind. They worked, shoulder to shoulder, laughing at silly mistakes. Once, Sarah reached across him for a dowel, her arm grazing his shoulder, lingering longer than needed. Ethan looked up, catching her eyes. Close. Too close. Her dark brown eyes held the window's light, like they carried an unspoken question. "You're easy to be around," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. Ethan swallowed, his pulse quickening. "So are you," he replied, his voice rough. The air thickened, not tense, but charged, like they stood at an invisible line. Sarah lit a cigarette, taking a long drag, smoke curling between them. She leaned back against the couch, watching him. "I usually keep my distance from tenants," she said, her voice soft. "Keeps things simple." Ethan smiled, trying to stay cool. "Am I breaking the rules?" She chuckled, ash falling to the floor. "Maybe." The shelf came together in under an hour, 4 neat squares against the wall, but neither moved. Ethan sat knees on the floor, inches from Sarah. She exhaled smoke, her eyes never leaving his. His chest tightened, not from nerves, but from something stronger, nameless. He reached out, his fingers brushing her hand, light, testing. Sarah didn't pull away. Her eyes locked on his, calm, certain, but waiting. Ethan leaned in, slow, afraid to shatter the moment. The first kiss was soft, her lips warm, tasting faintly of wine and smoke. She kissed back instantly, tilting closer, her hand resting on his arm, fingers tightening. The second kiss deepened, slower, like they were exploring. Ethan's hand found her waist, feeling the soft fabric, her warmth beneath. Sarah let out a small breath, barely audible, but enough to make his heart race. Wordlessly she stood, her hand gently tugging his. Ethan followed, letting her lead down the short hallway. Afternoon light fading through thin curtains. Her bedroom was tidy. White sheets, a small armchair by the window, a robe draped over the closet door. Her perfume was stronger here, mixed with clean laundry. They didn't speak. Everything unfolded naturally, unhurried, like it had been inevitable since their first glance on the porch. The next morning, Ethan woke first. Dawn slipped through the blinds, lighting Sarah's face as she slept. Her hair spilled across the pillow. A half-full water glass and a pack of cigarettes sat on her nightstand. He watched her, a strange feeling settling in, like everything had shifted, but felt right. She stirred, one eye opening, a tired smile. "Hey," she said, her voice raspy from sleep. "Hey," Ethan replied, smiling. "You good?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Better than good," he said, relieved. Sarah laughed, pulling the blanket closer, leaning into him like it was the most natural thing. That morning, sunlight streamed through Ethan's apartment window, casting soft lines on the hardwood. He woke, the lightness from the night before, lingering. Sarah's perfume faintly clinging to his shirt. He grinned, lazily pulling on a tee, stepping onto the porch to grab the newspaper Sarah often left for them both. But her porch was empty. The light was on. Odd for daytime. Her car was gone. He frowned, figuring she'd run out early for groceries. Return. By night, Ethan stood at his window, peering at her place. Dark. No smoke. No porch light. No familiar footsteps on wood. His phone lit up, a text from her. "Back soon. Don't worry." That was it. No explanation. No details. He reread it, thumb hovering over the screen, wanting to ask, but stopped. She said, "Don't worry." So he wouldn't. But a small void formed, like something was missing. The days that followed felt heavier than he expected. Ethan fell back into routine. Work, home, sleep. The auto parts store kept him busy. Drills whining, oil smells, coworkers banter. But at home, the duplex's silence weighed on him. No chance encounters with Sarah by the trash. No soft laugh from her porch. No teasing glance over coffee. He passed his window, glancing at her place, seeing only closed blinds, pitch black. One night, after a late shift, Ethan slumped on his couch, a cheap cold beer in hand. Streetlight filtered through the blinds, casting faint stripes on the wall. He replayed moments, working on her shelf, their first kiss, her breath mingling with his. He shook his head, took a swig, trying to shake the emptiness. But it lingered, like a half-finished dream. "She'll be back," he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. On the fifth night, he dreamed of Sarah. She stood on her porch, sweater slipping off her shoulder, cigarette glowing. She smiled, but when he stepped closer, she dissolved, leaving only smoke. He woke, heart pounding, forehead damp. He checked his phone. No messages. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering where she was, why she left, and why it hit him so hard. Nearly 2 weeks passed, and Ethan tried not to dwell. He focused on work, chatted with coworkers, even grabbed beers with them after shifts. But the apartment felt too quiet. He stopped checking his phone, stopped glancing at her window. Yet part of him still waited, like any moment her car would pull up, her porch light would flick on, and things would snap back. Then one night, past 10 p.m., tires crunched outside. Ethan was on the couch, TV on but ignored. His pulse quickened. He heard a car door shut, light footsteps, keys turning. Sarah's porch light glowed. She was back. He stood, peering through the blinds. Sarah stood there, in black leggings, a long sweater off one shoulder, hair loosely tied. She looked the same, but her eyes were tired, like she carried a story she wasn't ready to share. He wanted to knock, to ask where she'd been, why she left. But he stayed put, hand gripping the chair. Before he could decide, a soft knock came at his door. He opened it, and there was Sarah. No explanation, no apology. Just her, standing under the porch light, her hair catching the glow. "Hey," she said, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "Hey," Ethan replied, his voice rougher than he meant. He looked at her, wanting to ask, but her eyes, gentle, weary, silenced him. "Can I come in?" she asked, tilting her head. Ethan stepped aside, opening the door wider. She walked in, glancing around like it was her first time, though nothing had changed. The air felt heavy. Not from anger, but from unspoken words. Ethan stood, hands in pockets, waiting. She turned, meeting his eyes. "Sorry I disappeared," she said, her voice light, like she feared breaking something. Ethan shrugged, trying to sound calm. "It's your life. You don't owe me anything." Sarah exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. "Maybe not, but I should have told you." She stepped closer, slow, like she always did, careful but sure. "I missed home," she said, her eyes locked on his. Ethan held her gaze, the emptiness of the past days fading. "I missed having you around," he said, his voice low. She smiled, the smile he'd missed for 2 weeks. Without words, she reached out, her fingers brushing his arm, leaving a warm trail. He leaned in, their lips meeting, slow, like confirming everything was still there. The kiss deepened, urgent, like they wanted to erase the distance. Her hands slid to his chest. His arms pulled her closer. Her breath hitched, a small sound that sent his heart racing. They paused, foreheads touching, silent, just feeling each other's presence. After Sarah's return, their days settled into a new rhythm, effortless as breathing. No heavy talks, no need to label things. They were just them, two people side by side, sharing small, meaningful moments. Some nights, Sarah knocked, holding a bottle of red wine, her eyes a wordless invitation. Others, Ethan went to her place, sprawled on her couch, listening to her talk about a classic rock band she loved as a teen. Those moments, simple as they were, made the duplex. Ethan drove home early, late summer sun blazing on the quiet road. He stepped out, work bag slung over his shoulder, tired from a long day at the store. Glancing up, he saw a white van parked curbside, a plumbing company logo on its side. On Sarah's porch stood a man, mid-30s, tall, tanned, in a company polo and dusty boots, chatting with her. Sarah was there, barefoot, in a light white sundress that hugged her curves. Her hair was loosely tied, strands framing her face, the sunset making her glow almost unreal. The man laughed loudly, saying something that made Sarah smile back. But Ethan caught her body language, arms crossed lightly, shoulders angled back, like she was maintaining an invisible barrier. He paused, gripping his bag strap, a strange feeling stirring in his chest. Not anger, but a discordant twinge, like someone had entered his and Sarah's world. The man glanced over, nodded at Ethan, then turned back to Sarah. "All right, if anything acts up, you know who to call," he said, handing her a slip of paper, his eyes lingering too long. "Thanks," Sarah said, her voice even, polite. She took the paper, not looking back. The man headed to his van, started it, and drove off, leaving a faint dust trail. Sarah turned, catching Ethan's gaze. "Hey," she called, her smile warm. "Back early, huh?" Ethan shrugged, forcing a casual tone. "Yeah, slow day." He stepped closer, stopping a few feet away. "Looks like I've got competition," he said, half joking, but his voice carried a hint of tension. Sarah raised an eyebrow, stepping toward him, eyes gleaming. "Oh, you think so?" She tilted her head, like she was weighing his words. Ethan smirked, trying to mask the unease. He was putting in some effort. Sarah's soft laugh rang out, light in the warm air. She stopped inches from him, close enough for him to catch her familiar perfume. "You worried?" she asked, her voice low, eyes locked on his. Ethan shook his head, but his pulse spiked. "Should I be?" he countered, his tone low, searching. Sarah reached out, her fingers brushing his chest, right over the logo on his shirt. "Not a bit," she whispered, firm. Her touch stayed, warm, steady, dissolving his doubts. Ethan exhaled, the tension melting, replaced by that familiar warmth. That night, they sat on Sarah's porch, 2 glasses of red wine on the small wooden table between them. The sky turned deep purple, streetlights flickering on, casting gold on the grass strip between their units. Sarah lit a cigarette, exhaling slow, the curls fading into the cool air. She leaned back, glancing at him. "What do you think people say about us?" she asked, her tone casual but curious. Ethan sipped his wine, thinking. "Probably curious," he said, grinning. "Small town. Everyone loves a mystery." Sarah nodded, ash falling to the railing. "And what's their guess?" Ethan tilted his head, his gaze softening. "They'd say you're out of my league." Sarah laughed, the sound rich, filling the quiet. "I don't hear you arguing," she teased, eyes narrowing. "I'm not dumb," Ethan shot back, his grin widening. She looked at him, her gaze softening, like she wanted to say more, but held back. Instead, she reached for his hand, her thumb brushing his skin. Ethan squeezed back, feeling the connection. Wordless. Real. They sat, the hum of crickets blending with distant cars, a calm rhythm wrapping around them. Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, cigarette glowing in her other hand, smoke trailing into the night. In his mind, Ethan thought back to the plumber. Was he letting emotions run wild? Was that flicker of jealousy a sign he was in deeper than he thought? But with Sarah's hand in his, her breath soft against him, doubts faded. This wasn't just attraction, it was something more. Something that didn't need a label, but was enough to make him stay. Summer gave way to fall, the evenings cooler, carrying the scent of dry leaves. The duplex wasn't just Ethan's place anymore. It was a warm space where he and Sarah built something unnamed but real. No big plans, no promises, just moments that felt right. Like her porch light guiding him home each night, a quiet reminder she was there, close. One Saturday morning, a soft knock pulled Ethan from a late sleep. Sarah stood there, in gray sweats, a band hoodie half covering her head, hair spilling over one eye. She held 2 coffees, steam rising in the chilly air. "Your coffee's terrible," she said, smirking, handing him a cup. "What kind of good morning is that?" Ethan laughed, taking the warm cup, its heat seeping into his hands. "Morning, Sarah," he said, still flopping onto the couch, legs tucked under. Ethan sat beside her, sipping coffee, its bold flavor waking him. They sat in silence, no need for much talk. Morning light filtered through, catching her hair in soft streaks. "You know," Sarah said, staring into her mug, "I never thought I'd like having someone so close like this." Ethan glanced at her. "You mean me?" She smiled, eyes glinting over the mug's rim. "Yeah, you." Ethan grinned, warmth spreading in his chest. "I'm not that bad, right?" "No," she said, her voice soft, eyes meeting his. "You make it easy." He set his mug down, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his fingers grazing her cheek, warm, soft. "Because it is easy," he said, his voice low. She held his gaze, then leaned her head on his shoulder, exhaling, fully relaxed. "You make me want to stay," she whispered. That evening, after a simple dinner, spaghetti Sarah cooked, Ethan tearing up while dicing onions, they sat on her porch. Streetlights glowed faintly, casting gold on the grass between their homes. Sarah lit a cigarette, smoke curling in the cold air. Ethan leaned on the railing, close but not touching, just feeling her presence. Crickets sang, mixed with far-off traffic, a quiet lullaby. Sarah reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his, her thumb tracing his skin. "I like this," she said softly, eyes on the dark. "Me too," Ethan replied, squeezing her hand. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know," she murmured, "I used to think I was better off alone." Ethan looked down, catching her eyes, open, honest. "I'm glad you don't anymore," he said, steady. They sat, hands clasped, her porch light a warm halo around them. No promises, no clear future needed, just this moment. And the ones to come, like fall's gentle touch on their small town. But Ethan and Sarah's story isn't just about quiet porch nights. It's about unexpected choices, connections you can't predict, and how sometimes your heart leads you places you never planned. They found each other, not through grand gestures, but through glances, touches, and silences brimming with meaning. What about you? Have you ever met someone who shifted your world, even for a moment? Or are you still waiting for your own Sarah, your own Ethan to step into your life? This is The Cheater's Diary, where we tell real stories, complex relationships, raw emotions, and feelings that defy names. If this story moved you, smash that like button to show us you're here. Drop your thoughts in the comments, who's changed your life, and how. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story. Hit the bell to get notified for new episodes because you never know which tale will hit your heart next. Join us as we unravel the secrets of the heart, one story at a time, right here at The Cheater's Diary. Are you ready?